Hi there, just read this disclaimer please. Alright guys, at the end of the last video I asked if there was any information on the monthly updates that's missing that people would like to see. Lessons in History asked for information on the expenses. I've tried to kind of work it out for the month, but it's a bit tricky because I mean the brokerage fee, so the £5 in iWeb each time you buy and sell, and the 0.45% that Hargreaves Lansdown charges on open-ended funds, that's reasonably easy to find out. I can just log in and get that info. But the fees that the funds charge and the costs of like transacting within the funds, that's a bit tricky to work out. Requires lots and lots of data because they're charged as percentages, the fees are, and then the costs are only really given in percentages as well, even though the costs aren't a percentage. So what I've done is I've just had a go at estimating it, quite roughly, but you know, it's better than having no information at all. So what I've done is I've just copied the portfolio into a spreadsheet, and I've found out the fund charges. And now this isn't just the fee that the fund manager charges, it's also got in it the costs, like the transaction cost. I think stamp duty probably goes in there, so when I presume they pay stamp duty like individuals do when they buy and stuff, so I don't know, to be honest. But anyway, this is roughly where the information came from. So for instance, on City of London's Hargreaves Lansdown sheet, you can see their annual management charge of 0.33% of net assets. But then lower down is the number that I'm looking for, 0.39. So that gave me confidence that actually the 0.39 includes other costs as well as just the management charge. So that's mostly where I got the data. I kind of did go looking on the individual manager's website to try and scour for information, and I've put in my best estimates. For instance, on Fundsmith, Hargreaves Lansdown says, because I knew that 0.95 is how much Fundsmith charges, so I went to Fundsmith's website, got the fact sheet, and I found out that the other costs, like transaction costs, was 0.01% in 2019. So for Fundsmith, I have just added a 0.01 to the number that I got there. That's just the general. I mean, who knows if there's any slight errors here? I mean, and they're all estimates anyway, because they're based on last year's numbers. But it's, you know, it's better than nothing. So what I've done is I've used the kind of portfolio weighting as of today, because I don't know. This is another thing that's impossible to work out, because each day they apply their fees, but each day the share prices are different, aren't they? So each day is a different amount. So all I can really do is just kind of have a rough guide of roughly how much. I mean, I had more cash at the beginning of the month, obviously, so it's obviously going to be inaccurate, but it's a half decent guess at least, without spending hours and hours trawling through data and working it all out. And obviously the individual shares, they don't have fees, costs or fees, and cash obviously gets zero. And then just done a weighted average of this column and that column. So I estimate that my overall fund charges, including costs within the fund, is 0.631. I've then got the brokerage fee. So Hargreaves Lansdown, I found the management fee that was taken on the 3rd of April. Now that always refers back to the month before. So it was £1.47 for the month before. That's just the open-ended funds I own in the LISA and in the fund and dealing account. iWeb, I went back and looked at how many trades I did, and I did 4 trades, so that's 5 times 4 is 20. And then the stamp duty on one of those trades, I bought Henderson International Income, so that, because that's a share, it had stamp duty of £30.32. So the total brokerage fees was £51.79. And then now, this number here needs to be applied to a portfolio value, doesn't it? But obviously each day the portfolio changes in value. Well, each of the different things fluctuates. So all I can do is estimate it. So what I did was I just looked at the unitisation spreadsheet. On the 2nd of March it was worth that much, 2nd of April it was worth that much. I just did an average of the two. You know, it's better than nothing. It's not accurate, but it's better than nothing. So based on this value, the yearly fund fees and costs would be the weighted average fee and costs multiplied by the average value. That's what I've done there. That's how much I reckon it costs overall. If the value of the portfolio was static at that amount, I would estimate that it would be about that much a year. So then I've divided by 12 to get this 1 month's fees. Actually, I probably should have multiplied by 31 days, was it? I can't remember. And divided by 365, but that's, you know, that's close enough. And then the broker fees I've just added to the number that's up here. Just those two added together. And then I've done what I estimate as the percentage for the month. That's the percentage there. So it's just the total cost divided by the average value of the portfolio. So for that month, I paid that percentage, and that total amount is my estimate. So obviously I've just added it to the sheet here. Portfolios, oh, wrong one. Total cost of the portfolio there, I've just copied it across there. Now, for comparison, as it happens, the two I had before was the Life Strategy Funds and the Vanguard UK All Share. So I've done a similar thing. But when I went to the website for the Life Strategy, it says ongoing charge 0.22%. And then you hover over here. Oh, it used to. Oh yeah, you do that. Ongoing charge includes management fees and costs we incur to run the fund. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. I think that might include the transaction cost. Because, I mean, I think I misread that earlier on. I think I read that as being the transaction costs aren't included. So it led me to search this prospectus, I think this is called. And I found this line here. Transaction cost 0.00%. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what it says here. Costs are included. Include management fees and costs. But as you see, the year before, 2018 and 17, the number was more than zero, you know. So maybe that's a change in the recent years. Maybe those transaction costs previously weren't included in the 0.22%. But anyway, for that one, I've just done transaction cost 0, fee 0.22%. But then when I've gone to the Vanguard UK All Share one, let's see if the wording's different on this one. Transaction cost 0.06% and costs we incur to run the fund. Yeah, see, that's the same wording. But when I go to the prospectus here, on a similar line, where is it? Oh yeah, it's there. So this is for 2019, 18 and 17. I've got 0.11% for transaction costs. The footnote doesn't tell me anything unusual. Direct transaction costs have been calculated against the average net asset value for the financial year. So I'm a bit confused. I mean, I'd never go for this. This is not an alternative for me anyway. But operating charges, see, the charges are lower there, 0.05%. It's all a bit confusing. Anyway, what I've done for this one is I've put the 0.11% on top of the 0.06%, but then that's a completely different number. Look, I haven't spent a lot of time searching. In fact, I didn't even read this properly. I just kind of searched for costs and found this line. So really, you could just ignore. I mean, I suppose we could just ignore that and put it to 0, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't really care much about this comparison because I wouldn't buy that as an alternative anyway. But this is a valid alternative that I could go for in another life or in a few years' time. Anyway, I've done the same thing here, total cost, and then what I've done here is I've estimated what I would have done had this been my portfolio. So what I did over the month was I did a couple of switches of funds, and I put 14 grand of cash to work in 2 different goes, 7 grand then a 7 grand. So if I just had this one, I would have just spent £10 buying 2 different time points. So that would have cost me £10. Had this been my portfolio in iWeb. So I've done the same thing. I've worked out what the fund. So I've multiplied it by 1 minus the cash level. So it lowers the fund slightly because the cash levels don't get that 0.22% charge. So that's how much it would have cost there yearly. Divided by 12 again, same as before. So it's £54. Then I've added the broker fees of £10. So that number compares to that number. And then I've done the same percentage as well. So the total cost divided by the average value of the portfolio. And I've worked out that number there. So obviously it's lower. And it's lower by £144 for the Life Strategy funds. And lower by that much for the UK All Share. But you know, that might even be even lower. if the total cost including transaction is 0.06%, maybe that'll be even lower. But who knows? Anyway, this is the more important one. You see what I mean? So if my portfolio had the same level of charges as a life strategy fund, which I've commented there, my performance would have been that instead of that in this month. So, you know, not... I mean, it all adds up. If that was the differential every month for 20 years, that'll add up to a lot. But, you know, obviously, I wouldn't buy all these if I didn't think or hope, I suppose, that at some point they would outperform, or, well, over the long term outperform. And actually, having said that, it's not exactly my reasoning. A lot of the reasoning is for the income smoothness. So I don't know, it's not. But anyway, there's just my little analysis of the charges for that month. Each month going forward, I'll have a think about how much of this I would do for my monthly summaries going forward. I'm not sure, to be honest. I might just include that number, but it feels wrong to include that number without including these numbers as well, because obviously the costs aren't zero. They're a lot lower, but the costs aren't zero for the life strategy funds. Another thing to note also is that, you know, it's not really the costs that have made me underperform, because that would have been my performance compared to life strategy. It's still worse than that. It's the active managers underperforming the market that's causing the main issue here. So it's still 1.8%. I don't know, I can't do the sum in my head. 1.8% worse than the life strategy 100. I mean, the lowest charge. I mean, that's winning on all fronts. Really low charge is 0.37, and it was my best performer. But then you have other things like Fundsmith. 0.96 is one of my higher charges, and that was my second best, or roughly joint second best. So sometimes, you know, I think mostly it's down to me picking lots of UK funds that are lacking growth. Anyway, there's my little look at the charges for that 2nd of March to 2nd of April period. Alright, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye bye.